Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. We're starting a little bit late because the man in red in the middle there is struggling to communicate. We have the international mime artist, Gene Robinson, joining us from somewhere in America. He's now going to mime wherever he is in America. Well, he's not, because he's absolutely stopped still. But anyway, let's start, and hopefully Gene can sort that out, maybe reset what he's got. Bruce, just before we started, you were telling me that there has been an update to the 777 incident thing over there. What is the update to the 777 incident thing?
Well, a week or two ago, there was a Air New Zealand 777-200 reported seeing a drone on approach to Auckland International Airport here. It was big news in the papers, of course, another drone incident. And I've done a couple of pieces since then saying how this is like there's no verification, no third-party evidence, and it appears like the Pilots Association does have a bit of an agenda of its own to vilify drones. And the media had just taken everything at face value, no investigation, nothing. Just all the pilots, they must be true. But then the Associated Press actually went and did some investigating, probably spurred on by the embarrassment of not having done so, and they discovered that although there was allegedly this drone there, nobody called the police. The tower didn't call the police, CIA didn't call the police,
Wow.
No pilots called the police. So it's almost as if the pilots union didn't want this investigated because there might not have been a drone. That's just my opinion, just an honest opinion.
Wow.
So also, if the police had been called and there was a drone and they caught the operator of the drone, then it would have basically made their claims that the regulations weren't tight enough, would have made them a lie, because the regulations are tight enough and he was breaking the law. But they didn't want him caught, perhaps, because then they couldn't say, well, we need tougher regulation, we need registration, we need restrictions. So I think people aren't playing fair in this whole thing. And now it's just starting to come out, and even the public is starting to wise up to the fact that they're being fed a line of rubbish. And this vilification process is just totally unfair, and the media is playing a very, very tragic part in it.
Yeah, no, it's madness, isn't it? And we've had this week in South Africa. We've had something that's gone nuts in social media. But I've asked the South African Civil Aviation Authority. I put a word out. There was a diversion of an aircraft at Cape Town. None of the grown-ups know anything about it. Yeah, it's been tried in the court of social media as being true and fair and everything that's said. And the frightening thing is, it's a pilot group that started a manned aviation group that started all up. Yes, there's lots of nutty things that happen in our world, and people do some things that are a bit stretching it a little bit, but it ain't nowhere near the problem that's being hyped up out there at the moment. It's bad news. And of course, you've had the really big one over there, which was your investigative journalist. I couldn't believe that one. At what point do you have to do people have to take responsibility for what they say?
Well, it's interesting, that investigative journalist one, because most of the stories that were published on that, where the media has allowed comments to be left, the public have come out and said, this guy's a clown, this is rubbish, this is, has a whiff about it. And so again, the tide is turning in public opinion, that people are saying, oh, we're not that stupid, we may be a bit dim, but we're not that stupid. And so the thing that amazed me with that incident was, here we have a microlight aircraft which allegedly was brought down by a drone, but before the civil aviation investigators could come and have a look at it all, they bundled all the wreckage up, put it on a trailer and took it away. I would have thought they would have had to. They did. It was there's pictures of them putting it on a trailer and wheeling it off. I would have thought that to get a decent investigation, you'd want to leave it on site until the investigators had been in and done all their work to determine the cause of the incident. But it's almost as if, well, we don't want people finding out the truth, so let's just bundle it off and take it away before they can. I mean, there's so much disingenuous approach from people in this thing.
Can you see my flab is aghast at that? That was a pretty serious incident, and high Zoltan, and yeah, I'm sure the accident investigators will have expected it to be in place and not have been moved. That is just,
yeah. I fully expect that maybe they'll have lost the blades on the prop, because that would have been the final damning evidence. If a drone had hit the canopy of that aircraft, it must have gone through the propeller, and in going through the propeller, the leading edges of the propeller blades would have signs of hard impact damage. because it was over in a ploughed field, so there wasn't going to be any damage caused by that. So if you have those propeller blades there and they're not at all damaged on the leading edge, then you can say, well, it wasn't a drone. So maybe they got lost. I'm just speculating. But it wouldn't surprise me, based on the misinformation and the hysteria to date. I have no confidence that people are doing things for the right reasons and honestly.
It's mad. We're having a heck of a night tonight. I don't know what's happening. I've got to let the dog out. I'll be 10 seconds. The dog's going nuts here. The dog's going nuts. Talk to the people in the chat a second, Bruce. Come on, okay. Dog.
Please hold. It's the only music I know. Every time I get put on hold, they play Greensleeves. So that's all I can do. I'm sorry. There's not enough room here for me to do my Melbourne Shuffle.
So. Did Gene come? No, Gene didn't come back yet. I thought he had. Yeah, no, it was lost in. It was all working.
These YouTube troubles may be caused by the fact there's just been reports of a shooter in the YouTube headquarters. An armed gunman who's been shooting people. Yes, so maybe they've shot the man that does the audio.
I'm not sure you should have said that. Okay, if you say so. Yeah, no. What? So well, that's news to me that the wreckage has moved. So yeah, I would have expected to see an interim report about it now, because it's like a week out, isn't it? And it looks, so something happened, and you did a fantastic job of finding the little directive on the doors. It had that written all over it from the start, really, didn't it? Hatches and harnesses.
Well, not only that, but there's a lot of people who have chimed in with comments on the video that I put up, and one of them said that they just replaced a windscreen in one of those aircraft, and they're floppy and weak as hell. So there's someone with first-hand experience who's actually done the job, and he's saying they're really weak. So it speaks to structural failure. I mean, that overwhelmingly, always, Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is probably the right one. And the windscreen broke. Simple as that. I mean, where are the bits of drone? I mean, there wasn't a bird because there were no bits of bird in the back of the aircraft, but it was probably a drone because there were no bits of drone in the back of the aircraft. How does the logic work? It defies explanation.
Well, the other thing was the high velocity rifle as well. That was great. That's my go-to answer.
Well, this guy does have a few enemies. If you do some research, do it. Google for Rod Vaughan, Bob Jones. You'll probably come across a piece of footage. Bob Jones was he's a very rich and influential businessman in New Zealand. He likes fishing, so he was out in the middle of nowhere fishing, doing some trout fishing. Quiet, peaceful. And this Rob Vaughan guy arrives in a helicopter to interview him. So Bob Jones, being the kind of guy he is, calls a spade, walked up to him, punched him in the nose, told him to bugger off because, hey, I'm fishing. So confrontational is probably a better word than investigative when it comes to this guy's reporting style.
Okay. That sort of investigative journalist. Well, hopefully the CAA really haul him off above and beyond there. Yes, it's not been properly investigated because apparently they bundled up the aeroplane and put it on a trailer before anyone got to look at it. So I was
surprised to see that. It was basically the same day, I think, they bundled it away.
I'm absolutely certain the what do you call it there, NZCAA or whatever it is, would not be best pleased with that. Still, it looked like quite a wreck, so it wouldn't have been much of a trailer you'd have needed. It was it was all nice and compacted down.
They just took the wings off it, threw it on, and away they went, because it wasn't that badly damaged. It was just the prop blades were broken and the windscreen was smashed.
Yeah.
Cleaning.
Did you see? I didn't see any images of the smashed windscreen.
It just looked like a fracture. There was no signs of scuffing or anything. It just broken plexiglass, broken Lexan, and that was it. So there was no obvious signs that it had been penetrated by anything. They didn't show you very much, of course.
So what? And dear viewers in the chat. So at what point? What was my comparison? I thought of it. I can't sort of. For argument's sake, claim to have murdered someone when I haven't, and made a big fuss, or claim to have a big crash when I haven't. People get into trouble for that sort of thing. So why are people being allowed to just get away with this sensationalism, or is it just something that's attached to any new technology, some weird sensational stories? Surely we should be holding some of these people to account now.
Well, the interesting thing is he's a true journalist. He never said it was a drone. It was probably a drone. Very carefully crafted.
It was very well written.
When they come back and find it was a structural failure, I didn't say it was a drone, just probably. But the thing that really struck me too, and I mentioned it in my video, is this guy openly acknowledged that this was a dangerous place to fly because a lot of drones had been seen there. So It's the equivalent of swimming in shark-infested waters and complaining you got bitten. If you know there's an area where there's a high risk of encountering drones and you're taking a passenger for a flight, why would you go into that area at high risk to yourself and your passenger? It's a very poor judgment call. And so we now have to look at manned aviation, as I said, and say, well, the world is changing. You can't necessarily fly everywhere you want to fly whenever you want to fly because it's no longer safe to do so. We have to start taking into account that there are drones out there. So whereas before you could go below 500 feet with impunity because there wasn't any problems. You might hit the occasional bird, but that was pretty rare. But now 500 feet and below is a danger area because there are a lot of unmanned aircraft, a lot of RPAS down there. It's only going to get more. So the regulators have to start enforcing that 500-foot minimum far more rigidly. And they have to start saying, well, pilots have to take responsibility now if they choose to break those regulations. It's no longer necessarily the entire responsibility of the RPAS operator, it's also the responsibility of the manned aircraft operator. If you choose to take on the risk, then you accept the consequences. So this has to change, and this is the maturing of the whole industry. This will see when here in New Zealand, CAA have said that RPAS have the same rights to the airspace as manned aircraft, but it hasn't been codified into regulation yet. It needs to be codified into regulation to show that no longer are we just the poor second cousins to manned aircraft.
And then, of course, those RPAS probably will have better ways of getting out of the way of the manned aircraft and probably will have seen them coming using electronic means and vision-based systems and stuff like that. But that will have perhaps disrupted the job of work that they were doing. So they could incur a financial loss. They could be in a no-town area doing their work, doing their thing, and somebody blunders through, which, as you say before, probably wouldn't have been so much of a drama because there was no one there doing that sort of thing, or it was a helicopter, it was another manned aircraft doing it, and you would have spoken up wireless and things like that. Yeah, in England, a chap, I felt a little bit sorry for him. Well, a little bit, but he landed at an airfield last year without permission. An airfield he'd used a lot, but it's quite a busy one, and the tower frequency had changed, and he'd not read the NOTAMs, and he was 79, and he took his license off him, which I think was, but he didn't read the NOTAMs. And he said, but I tried to call 19 times. So, yeah, the manned aviation's got to, and I speak from a manned aviation with a manned aviation head on, but it's got to start acting a little bit more responsibly. Ranty head.
Yeah, I think you should get Tim, I don't know his second name, but a guy called Tim. He's the head of the New Zealand Airline Pilots Association. You should get him on here and have him explain himself. Explain the attitude of their union to RPAS, because I would like to know what's driving their PR, their demand for registration, which has been proven ineffective, their demands for tougher regulations when we can't enforce the ones we've got. I'd like to grill them a bit over this, and I think a lot of people would like to see that.
Well, I tried to get your man Rob on, but that didn't happen. Rob, yeah, it was Rob, wasn't it? What was he called? Crashman.
Who's it?
Crashman, not Rob.
Crashman?
Crashman, the man that was upside down in an airplane with blood on his head.
Oh yeah, Rod Vaughan. Yeah,
Rod,
wasn't interested.
No. And
strange that, isn't it?
Because I wanted to cage it. I wanted to sort of say to him, you can run rings around us on this. You're a professional journalist. You'll be all over us. But funny enough, it's not rushed to. He's not rushed.
No.
I don't know.
He is injured.
Well, absolutely. I wonder what's happened to Gene. He was going to show us stuff, and it was going to be fantastic. It was all going to be in 3D and everything.
Technology fails again.
Interesting. Teledrone, lower than regulated size. What will the pilots do when people start flying those at the end of a runway? Well, Osmo drone, I think those tele things can probably bounce off most areas. That's the wrong thing to say, I know. but
don't they have geo on the tele?
I shouldn't think so. They don't have a GPS, do they?
Do they not? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think. Well, perhaps somebody in the comments can verify that. I don't think they have a GPS, but I think they have really good vision-based placing of themselves.
But speaking of technology failures, have you seen the Russian? You've had the Russian postal drone. Wasn't that fantastic? I was so impressed.
Yes, it was.
I think they should force all buildings to be registered, and they should not be allowed to fly without a license.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
Especially brick ones.
Yeah, well, it's the building definitely won, didn't it? In terms
for those who haven't seen it, you've got to see the video of the Russian postal drone demonstration, and it should have knocked before it entered.
Oh, absolutely. And the postman only knocks twice, or whatever that thing is, or once, whatever. Once, whatever.
Because, yeah, the current vernacular, epic fail.
Epic down with the kids, down with the kids. And I think it was quite an old thing because he did a bit of the DJI disco dance.
Yeah, he did a bit of a he did the shuffle. Yeah,
he did all that, and then you could see straight away it was
massive toilet bowl.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it, when you can see. But what was it about anyway? Because it wasn't of a size that could have listed a couple of. Maybe they don't have email in Russia, or maybe they're not so keen on it because letters was all it was going to left. You know, it wasn't,
exactly. It was kind of, and then the Russian Postal Service says nothing to do with us. We were just looking.
I don't know if you saw this. Oh, did they?
Yeah, they actually distanced themselves from the demonstration. They said, we weren't demonstrating it. We were simply there as observers.
Well, I don't know if you saw the clip that I saw, but whoever did it and had the postal service sign blowing off and the dust.
Yeah,
I thought that was very, that was top news gathering. That was top.
But it's all right because Putin has weapons that no one can counter. That may be one of them.
Well, yeah, they have a very, very. In fact, SUS News is completely and utterly copied without permission over there, and I'm too frightened to do anything about it. But I mean, they've sent me a couple of what's it, DMCAs or whatever it is on things I actually wrote. And they put it in the Russian one. It was like, well, hang on a minute. But I was very. You just carry on with that.
If you can get Putin on here, and we'll talk to him about what role RPAS play in his new weapon system that he's all been developing.
Putin on it, I'm sure. Yeah, that'll be easy. That'll be very, very easy.
You need a translator, probably.
They've got a very big group of developers over there. Very, very. Sorted out industry, really. Big shows, and they are making their own. And I think the one that we saw fail wasn't locally produced. I think
that looked like it was sort of Banggood to me.
It did look all very, very much Banggood, didn't it? I have been looking at your. I've completely forgotten what we were going to talk about. We had a very rough. It revolved around the guest. It hasn't turned up. That's not good. We did turn up, but he went away again. I would be looking at very nerdily. We spoke about this last week briefly. I made a terrible video this week with regard to the tracking thing, and I've looked at the range of your FLARM setup there at the airfield, because I know you've got a receiver for this there, and you can see people's range footprints. But I am just this is just $31. This is ridiculous. Look,
I saw you flying your bonsai with it the other day. It came up on my FLARM receiver.
Absolutely. Well, you got a heck of, that's it. I wondered. That's why I checked, because you got a heck of a range there. But there's your ADSB. It was not ADSB, but there's your electronic conspicuity.
Conspicuity. Yes. Why don't they make a better word for that? I mean, that's a ridiculous word. It's like concatenate. It's a word that just shouldn't be in existence. It's too cumbersome to say.
Well, you wouldn't want to say it much. You'd be very conspicuous saying conspicuity lots. I'm hesitant to say it for a third time because it's bound to go wrong.
I think just call it sore thumb technology. Stands out like a sore thumb.
Or a dog's yeah, that's it. Yes, that's it. Absolutely.
We have to start inventing some three-letter acronyms to cover this stuff, I think, because words are just not sufficient.
Well, yes, words are not sufficient. Well, the words I was going to take this at is I see that the people that are running the UTM experiment down there with you have just today rolled out their little special built-in link with DJI, and Yeah, I wonder who's going to win this UTM race. It's a funny old thing. There's only and I don't know if you saw just before on there, the FAA have said they're looking for Lanc new people to have a look at Lanc, and in the thing it says Lanc pronounced Lance.
So that Lance is not Lankers.
No, it says it in the press. It's pronounced Lance, Lance, and then you look at this Laanc. So it's not pronounced Lance anyway. It's
no.
They've been listening to it. They've obviously listened to us. But yeah, who do you think is going to win this race, Bruce? And how is anyone going to win this race? And should they even win this race? Should this be something government should be doing? Why should this be in private companies' hands?
Yeah, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because as soon as you divest that power into a private organization, you have commercial pressures come to bear. And when you have commerce versus safety, usually commerce wins. You know, the dollar speaks louder than the grave. People that are dead don't say much. So I like to think there shouldn't be a price on safety. And so therefore safety should be something that's provided as a service for free, not as something you have to pay for. Because here in New Zealand at one stage, they started charging pilots for weather information. Ridiculously stupid thing to do, because without good weather information in a country like New Zealand, you cannot safely plan or conduct your flights. But there was an opportunity to make money, and they quickly realized that was a bad thing to do. It's going to be the same with the UTM. If you have to pay for access to a service that provides safety, then it's never going to fulfill its role properly. It should be provided free of charge, and it's something that is picked up by tariffs somewhere or by taxes or whatever. It shouldn't be something that's for sale. You can't sell safety. So yeah, in that respect, it should be run by governments or government agencies on a non-commercial basis without the necessity to turn a profit. The goal, the first, last, and only goal should be to provide safety. So that's not going to happen in the private sector.
No, I know. I'm quite worried about it myself. And as you're aware, and obviously the people that want to provide these services will probably offer it to close to free to you and I, but they're going to be doing something with all the data that they're pulling in from us. That's for sure. That's the bit that they want to sell. So also, governments don't have the balls to codify solutions. I think that's probably a fair comment, actually. I think that to a degree they are looking for people just to say, oh, we've got a solution for you. Oh, thank you very much. Here we go. You know, I don't know. What do you think about that, Bruce?
Yeah, well, here's the guy that stands by the phone box. He was saying that the government wasn't interested in that. They didn't want a solution that was a commercial solution. They wanted, you know, with DJI, for example, they didn't want to hand it over to one vendor. So if that's their attitude, that probably isn't going to happen. And I look at the roading system. We have police. I don't know about America, but in most countries, the police are an agency of the government. So the government makes the rules for driving on the road. The government enforces those rules. It is not run as well, some people would say it's run as a profit center with the speeding tickets and fines and things, but it is run as primarily to ensure safety. And that the airspace should be the same. It should be run with that view. And I think that's what we have to do. At the moment, we've got all these little companies vying for dominance or even a slice of that pie. You know, you've got Air Maps and you've got Altitude Angel and all these companies. That disjointed, even if they talk to each other, it's never going to be as effective as a homogeneous, single, monolithic, perhaps even solution, which is completely seamless. Because as soon as you have company A talking to company B, that interface is going to be a potential source of problems and delays and things. And information that's not accurate and timely is worse than no information at all. So there's too many potential problems there. It just has to be run seamlessly. So yeah, I don't think that the private sector is going to be the best solution to that, unless, you know, the government farms it out to that private sector, but it's done under very, very strict control in terms of, you know, what they can do, can't do.
And just what sort of traffic management provision did you make for your not event? I guess you didn't have to make any because there wasn't an event.
No, there wasn't. And so we didn't do anything, but we did not do anything. So that's a positive. Yeah, with our airfield, interestingly enough, in all those problems with planes and drones, we fly models and drones at our airfield every weekend in close proximity to manned aircraft. And there's never been an incident, because we follow the rules, and the rules are perfectly adequate. As long as you follow the regulations, there is no danger to anybody. So again, it's not a case of inadequate regulation. And in our area, enforcement is done by the people who are responsible. We enforce it ourselves, so that enforcement isn't an issue. Education is not an issue because we're all aware of what's going on. So it shows that if people simply are aware and follow the rules, we don't really have a problem.
Yeah, no, and as much as the real reason I'm playing around with this is for a gliding club where I was doing some flying, and I want to equip their gliders because we did lose a glider, and the two pilots on board, one of them passed away right next to me, and it wasn't the best. And what bugs me is if we'd perhaps got there half an hour earlier, perhaps we could have done a lot more. That would have given us the time. So $30 tracker might give us time. That's a rant. I didn't need to go there. but I don't think necessarily small RPA need to have ADS-B or visibility solutions. I think
you did right. Yeah, because the last thing you want is too much noise obscuring the signal. The stuff you want to track is the stuff that really does pose a threat. The stuff that's flying at or above 400 feet, the stuff that weighs 25 kilos, the stuff that is a definite high risk operation. You don't care about the young guy flying his mini quad below the treetops in a park somewhere. You don't care about the kid at a school ground with a little foam aeroplane that weighs 300 grams. Those things are just part of the noise. And if you take that out of the equation, then your UTM becomes far more accurate because it's not having to do a whole lot of useless work tracking things that are inconsequential. So in that respect, yeah, I think the call for a UTM, we remember that I think it's over 90% of all RPAS traffic at the moment is recreational, and it's low risk recreational. So although there's this big call for UTMs, we've still got a long way to go before a UTM becomes an essential part of our air traffic control system, because the number of commercial drone flights are still very limited, and they also tend to be happening in places, rural areas or something, where there isn't a lot of manned aircraft, inspecting wind turbines and things. Well, that's not, you're not going to have a 172 flying through the blades of a wind turbine. So there is already a separation. We've got this altitude, this 100 feet of vertical separation. I think it's good that we're thinking about it now and we're getting things in place, but I don't think we want to rush into things because there isn't a need to rush into them. We need to do it very clearly and methodically and think it out properly, because as we know in aviation, once you set a standard, it lingers for far too long. ADS-B, for example, they outlive their technological usefulness, but because it takes so long to get a standard adopted, they're getting the next one adopted just, by the time it is, the previous one's well past its best by date. So we only get one chance to do it right the first time. We need to make sure that we're doing that. We don't capitulate to pressure from this group or that group or this commercial entity or whatever. So, yeah, I think we've got to pace ourselves.
Yeah, it does worry me that a lot of people jump to say, "Oh, let's all just equip with ADS-B and everything will be all right." No, it doesn't work like that. But Osby Drone in the comments says, "Yes, ministers." It's a bit like that program Silicon Valley. I don't know if you've seen that. That very much does the drone industry, and perhaps I need to watch a few Yes Ministers as well again, because that is probably bob on right. And for any Americans watching, you need to go and see find Yes Minister on YouTube, and it's just about how governments don't get anything done, basically, but using the best justifications in a lot of ways. You see, he point his finger at the industry solution, just not sure which one to point at. Yes, it's a bad news thing. An unboxed warehouse. You're new to the channel. Hello. That's what are you unboxing at the moment? That'll be interesting. So, what else can we talk about, Bruce? Tell me, what else can we talk about?
No idea. I'm lost for words. You know me.
Yeah. Your vibe. Well, of course, I'll just say what the young kid says. It's not viral till it's 5 million views in 10 minutes. So, but that went very well for you. Is it continuing to rise?
I think it's probably reached its apogee at the moment. And it was interesting. It was just, I've got plenty of videos with very similar content, very similar thumbnails and things. And it shows that this whole YouTube thing is kind of crazy. It's very hard to best the system. It's very hard to outguess the algorithms, probably because they change them regularly. But what it does show is that the success or failure of a video is far more dependent on whether YouTube decides to promote it than whether it's any good. I've seen some fantastic channels, some fantastic content with hundreds of views. And I'm thinking, why isn't this more widely seen? And then I see things like PewDiePie who puts a video up and gets 4.5 million views overnight. And I'm thinking, my goodness.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to deal with the YouTube landscape, especially when it's changing so much. I mean, overnight they can say, well, you're not allowed these videos anymore. And I know there are a lot of firearms-related channels that have basically given up because suddenly what was okay yesterday is not okay today, and their videos have been demonetized or their entire channel's been taken away. it's kind of worrying, because why would you invest so much time, effort, and money in creating a valuable resource such as a YouTube video channel with good, informative information, when with the flick of a switch, YouTube can completely eliminate it overnight because suddenly someone's decided this is no longer meeting our, community guidelines or something. It's really quite worrying, and who knows? This channel could disappear tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And Oz by Drone has had exactly that same issue. So maybe we should. I can never contact anybody in the comments. There's loads of things that need to be changed in this. Can I? No, I can't just directly contact Oz by Drone. I think you should jump in. I'm going to put the joining link. In fact, anyone can join. Any of you can join. Join in. I'd like to hear about that because maybe that says tomorrow, as you say. Yeah, I suppose though the thing is that YouTube will say, well, you're getting this thing for free, aren't you? Which you are. You're getting all this video streaming. I'm talking to you in New Zealand now. How would we have done this 10 years ago? It would have been impossible. But then we'd counter, well, they haven't got any content without the creators. So yeah, it's a very tricky one, that, isn't it? It's hard.
Yeah, without the creators, there's no content, then there's no advertising, so YouTube makes even less money. Yeah,
he's still in his PJs. That's really not an excuse. I actually happen to have my trousers on for this one, but very often I thought
we were bound to be shut down for a minute when you started lifting your legs up there.
Yeah, no. The algorithm's not that good, is it? What else?
Oh, no.
I got to look at our email to remind myself of what I said we would do. There really hasn't been a lot, and that's look, what's this? What's this? Here we are. There's a Kickstarter. We can do it here. We can. I can have a look at this. There's a super affordable autonomous folding drone coming to Kickstarter.
It's never been done before.
It's never been done before.
Lily, what?
It's the Levitop T1 Levitop autonomous folding, just raised 6.0. I'd never even heard of it. 600% of its goal on Kickstarter.
Well, I'm surprised. I thought people would have got burnt by there's been quite a few Kickstarter drones that have crashed and burned before they've even lifted off. So you have to be very careful, I think, with them, because it's easy to put out a bunch of specs and say, we're going to do this. But as I found with my 250 grams camera drone, which I'm still working on quite hard, it's easy to set yourself a goal and think this will be a piece of cake. But if that limit was 300 grams, I'd be finished by now. But it's not. It's 250. So that 50 grams is a real hurdle. And I'm working very hard I'm even looking at things now like vacuum formed frame using PET as a vacuum form, because it's lighter actually, and it has some benefits over using carbon sticks and things. So I'm having to think right outside the box to get the weight down to 250 grams and still provide the functionality and a reasonable flight time. So yeah, it's easy to do it on paper, much harder to do it in real life.
I think your clue there isn't the Spark still like 260, 270, something like that? So your clue is, if that crowd aren't managing to get it done, then there must be.
But they're sort of looking. They've got a lot more functionality now with all the smart stuff on board and the gesture stuff like that. I mean, this is basically just a GPS equivalent of a Ardu Pilot type drone that'll just come back to home, hover, position, hold, that sort of thing. Not particularly overwhelming in its functionality.
It's got mine's even got FLARM tracking. You've got to have FLARM as well. This will be sub 250 as a glider. So my sub 250, it can be part of UTM.
But does it have FPV?
No, it doesn't. It's just a glider.
Oh man.
FPV. I haven't tried it. That's one thing I haven't tried at FPV is gliding. I must. Well,
they glide like a brick. Those
do they?
They're terrible. Oh, terrible glide performance. I don't know what it is, but you cut the power on them and they basically come down at 45 degrees most of the time. Right. They're not a good glider.
That's set up for slope soaring. I live on a slope, so it's just going to blow a gale, and that's fine.
Didn't the BBC get told off for using the word slope?
Oh. They did. So that doesn't exist anymore. That's not an RC discipline. Is that right?
No.
Oh, I see. Oh, I'm so.
You must have been disoriented when you said that.
Oh dear, dear, dear. Yes, you see, watch this Osprey drone. This is this channel being knocked off. And you
It's about to be
at your non event, you had iForce 2D, Chris, who
yes.
won't come on here. I don't know why he won't come on here. I'm going to email him again. Nervous or something, and then of course you had Ron and yourself. So you had the RC modeling world royalty in one non-event there. It was so
yeah, it was good. If we had actually had an event, I think we'd get a really good turnout. But of course the powers that be, that the local council, we have to pay a six-figure sum if we want to have an event, as a deposit, because who knows what damage we could cause. It's just the politics.
And you've got a lot of grass at that airfield, haven't you? And I've seen this week that damage can be caused to aircraft if there's any grass about, or cherry pickers, one or the other.
Well, actually, you know what I picked up from that? I realised that in the South Island of New Zealand, they must pick cherries with drones, because I'm sure that yak had a drone.
Yeah, yeah,
cherry
absolutely.
Surely it was kind of been something as mundane as a crane. But yeah, that's a shame, isn't it?
And I don't know if, dear viewer, if you haven't seen it, I'm going to get Bruce to say what the airfield's called, because I'm going to say it wrong.
Wanaka.
Wanaka, yeah. Warbirds over Wanaka. A Yak 3, wasn't it? Landed on the grass, and somebody parked a cherry picker just off to one side. Now, the pilot should have. I don't know. I don't quite know what the visibility is like on the approach. Have they got a tower down there? Because whoever cleared him to land on the grass is also responsible for that.
Well, yeah, you'd think that an air show would be under control. There'd be someone directing the traffic and supervising. But of course, I don't know. It's a tail dragger. It's a warbird. Maybe he got a bit of a swing on or something. I haven't actually seen the video. Maybe he was going to land beside it.
No. He's going straight. He's going straight. And
well, it could have been a camouflage cherry picker.
It was in a fetching yellow.
Well, there you go, yellow. It's not that obvious sometimes. Well, if you can't see a cherry picker from several meters away when you're landing, how can you see a drone from 2,000 feet? It's 300 kilometers an hour.
That's a really good analogy. Yes. So the eyesight test should now include a cherry picker somewhere.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, have you seen the Universal Drone Identifier chart? That's got a picture of a cherry picker and it's labeled as a drone.
Oh, there
it's got the Starship Enterprise and birds and everything is a drone.
That
graphic is wonderful. Add a cherry picker to that.
Yeah, so there's no end, but yet again, our manned aviation brothers, we got TFRs for local war. But yeah, I'm sure there was a big TFR in there. It's a fantastic collection of warbirds. I'd love to. That's certainly on my wish list is to see that air show. But they do get pretty handy with the crashes at it, don't they? That doesn't have a stellar safety record. That's for sure.
Well, you're looking at very old planes, and no matter how well maintained there are, there's always going to be issues. And you're looking at a very busy pattern there, with a lot of aircraft and not necessarily flying circuits, because you're doing strafing runs and there's display stuff and that. So at any air show, there's always a much higher risk of accidents happening. I mean, look around the world at the number of air show accidents there have been compared to regular accidents at a normal airfield. It's just a high risk environment. So you've got to accept the risk as part of the spectacle.
I suppose, but they do seem to have quite a few of them there. So it does just again says how dangerous manned aviation can be and things. I mean that was just shouldn't have happened. And there was nobody in the cherry. It's not like a cherry picker was being driven along and it stopped and there's a bloke running away from the cherry picker or something like that.
I think it was a remotely piloted cherry picker.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know what it was. I mean, why even? I know it was yellow, but why even was it on the airfield? Maybe it was for lifting.
Someone told me it was being used as a camera platform or something at one stage.
That's what I was. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, yeah, and perhaps the controller that. Well, if there was a controller for the runway, he should have seen that on there, and before he accepted the runway, when he took over his shift, he should have made sure it was clear of whatever. Yeah, there's so many.
Some of those things, some of those cherry pickers do have a remote control on them, so that you can, from the ground, you can operate them. So it does fit the definition of a drone, doesn't it? Remotely piloted, had a camera on it, and it shouldn't have been near an airfield. It should have been 4 kilometers away, right?
Did it have a GPS?
I don't know.
Well, you see, yeah, no, you see. That's
It'll go down as a drone incident. Don't worry.
well, yes, I think we should probably make sure it does by writing the report and sending it to the press, because we have to make sure that happens. Curious about the new unmanned aircraft integration pilot program, allowing Zipline Amazon to test out drone deliveries on a wider scale. Any insights on this? Flyaway cherry picker, yeah, yes, cherry picker flyaways. That's terrible. Isn't it terrible when a cherry picker just flies on it and having flown away, just crashes down next to you? But the Zipline and Amazon, well, Zipline, of course, is doing most of its work in Africa, just up the road from me, in fact, and doing a very good job of it as well. They don't really need to test much in America because they're getting the job done in Tanzania and other places. And Amazon are doing their deliveries in the UK. Word on the street is that that FAA things was sewn up from the start, and they know which projects but tinfoil hat time, and I'm not going to name names, but I was shown a list of who to expect to win. so we shall follow that with interest. It's all a little bit too late. I don't know, have you followed that at all, Bruce, what they're doing over there?
No, but what I did see was drones used in smuggling tens of millions of dollars of phones and things.
That was a ridiculous headline.
Didn't they do a wonderful job, eh?
They
did,
wonderful
yeah.
job. 15,000 phones, yes.
Yeah. And
that was.
And you know how they did it? You read the drones didn't carry the phones, of course. No, they carried the little piece of string.
Absolutely, so they were pulling a line across, and all the of course it was, we're moving by ropes and pulleys and stuff like that. So very clever. But yes, the drone gets the headline for moving 15,000 phones a night. It's ridiculous. It's open to all for 30 days.
We should get a mainstream media representative here, someone from the press. Let's get their side of it. What are their criteria for publishing a drone story? How much investigation do they do? And is it really all driven by the desire to sell advertising to eyeballs? We need to get someone here and grill them. I think we should do more grilling on this program.
Well, yes, we could. Yeah, we're normally too nice to do that. But yeah, no, we could definitely have somebody on board. But by very definition, if somebody was game enough to come along, it would probably be quite hard to grill them because they'd probably come up with some very good answers. But yeah, it's definitely.
Sorry, have you met anybody from the media recently? It's either an intern who's there to put bylines on press releases, or it's someone who's just making cups of tea. I think the real journalists have long retired.
Well, they're not. The money's not there for them to write the long stories that they've researched and put the effort in. The story's got to be a lady with enormous knockers crashes drone into whatever, and 10 lines. And on to the next one.
In some ways, it's kind of worrying because obviously the media is catering to a demand. So what it's saying is that the general public is no longer interested in the in-depth researched investigative articles. They just want page 3 stuff. They just want tabloid stuff. So that's what they're being fed. But is it a cause? Is it the cause or is it the result? I mean, are they after that because that's what they've been fed and they've developed a taste for it, or is it that's what they've demanded? So that's which is the cause, which is the effect? That's what I want to know. And I think we're heading down a very steep, slippery slope if we're all looking for 5-second news bites of ladies with boobies. This is the world will fall apart.
Well, yeah. And people who do dodgy stuff will be allowed to carry on doing dodgy stuff because they won't be exposed and then it won't be believed if something comes out about something or someone. So yeah, it does give some people in power the chance to hide a little bit in plain sight.
Exactly. It's like remember the Watergate affair. It was the media that brought down a corrupt government, and without the media to act as a watchdog, governments can do whatever they like.
It is worrying. Yeah. Want to get Kevin F back? Yes. Yeah. No. Kevin F might yet be back. Yeah. There are things afoot. He's getting harder to get on here because he, of course, is getting further and further in with Department 13, and so it's its day job. So it's got to be a bit more circumspect about it. There's plenty going on. Some people argue that the Australian forces are getting their guys to learn to fly DJI equipment because that's what the enemy is using in the battlefield that they're facing. So if they know how the enemy is operating it and stuff like that, they know what to do, and they're even getting the troops to modify them and drop stuff. So
do they teach them to use AK-47s and things as well?
I don't know.
For that reason?
I don't know.
Well,
you do get an opportunity to use unusual weapons and things like that. That does come along. They have a tender out to get people trained. Yes, that's the tender. And that's what I've been told. That's what that tender's for, is training so that they know the enemy. Not necessarily to fly. Oh, the pity Osprey drone can't. So obviously we can't see Osprey drone's channel if it's been taken off. Let's see if we can see that. Yeah, no, there's lots of things afoot, lots of skullduggery. The our FAA asking for more LANC providers is only to give a little bit more transparency, because they gave they gave it to a couple of companies to run, and that wasn't fair by a long way.
Did you see that a woman found a military drone in her backyard, an Israeli military drone, because they lost it some time ago and they were looking for it, couldn't find it. She was having to wander around. Here's this great big military fixed-wing drone in her backyard.
I didn't see that one.
Finders keepers?
Does she not go out into a yard much?
Does she not? I don't know. She's got a big yard. I think it's sort of a rural area. I think so. But they'd spent some time looking for this thing and they couldn't find it. So, really, what kind of responsibility is there on the military? Yes, they should have had one of Gary's
$31. Was not Gary's things, his Open Glider Network things, and
yeah, but that's your one.
That is true. Yes,
you should start a little online shop selling this stuff, Gary. Yeah. And
well, somebody actually complained because I didn't put like an affiliate link in the bottom selling.
Affiliate links, you must have
exactly. Well, no, I can't stand affiliate links, so I won't put an affiliate link. Not that I can't.
What about some merch? Where's your merch? SUAS News T-shirts and things,
Oh God, yeah. Well, it's another. I got into another argument this week because some poor fellow in the UK had put a lot of money into various directories to get work and stuff like that, and I said, well, it's not really the best idea. My opinion, and I don't really have a hat in the ring because I don't fly commercially. But and the reason I don't fly commercially is quite simple. I don't have a skill that I can leverage enough. If I was a surveyor, I could use a drone for that. If I inspected roofs, I could do that, or whatever. I don't have a skill where it make enough difference as another tool in the toolbox. So I said, you must. Well, that's what you need, and I wouldn't worry with all the directories. They're not much more than a con. I could. That's another thing. We could have a directory. I could have a directory, but I'm not a big fan. What's your thoughts on directories, Rant?
No, they're just a way to fleece people of money. Because when was the last time you went to? You go to Google, you type in what you're looking for there. Bing. Directories. They were 1995, but long gone now. Like Yellow Pages. Who uses the Yellow Pages these days? Nobody. That's a business directory, but everyone just goes and Googles it. Directories are just it's a con job, really. Well, I just found something really interesting, though. I see that in the state of Victoria in Australia, they're going to use drones to help monitor duck hunting. Can you imagine how successful that will be? How many drones will survive the 12-gauge buckshot?
Yes. That'd be an ambush. Being asked in case of zipline, what's the communication protocol? I think they use quite a lot of cellular modules and an RFD 900s, and I know that zipline use these. But anyway, how many times can I get a mention in?
And in other news, you see in Japan, they've really relaxed the beyond visual line of sight rule. Commercial operators now going to be in Japan. They've relaxed the beyond visual line of sight rules. They believe that flying beyond visual line of sight is critical to the deployment of commercial UAVs. So they are really relaxing it, and it's going to be much, much easier to be able to fly beyond visual line of sight. Hooray, someone's woken up and smelt the coffee.
Yeah, but somebody told me that under Part 102 in New Zealand, you guys can fly FPV sort of almost up to 2 kilometers and stuff like that. That's a lot of BVLOS.
Well, there's no express. That's not written into any of the regulations. You've got to provide a
Okay.
safety case, and it's just typical. You've got to prove that there's no way you can possibly hurt anybody. And if the CAA accepts that, then you can do it. But I mean, you've got to. There's so much work involved in producing those safety cases, and we all know that the quality of your argument is measured by the centimeter, and it's like, well, and the people who are writing these safety cases, in theory, they've never done it before because it would have been illegal. So how would they know?
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, it's definitely what the industry is waiting for, and then that's going to change very quickly what people will need to buy to service that. Because as soon as you can get it going, a lot of the platforms that people are using now just won't cut the mustard, and we're going to see the rise of fixed wing stuff. Maybe we'll see separate lift thrust. I still don't get it really, because once you've gone BVLOS and you can fly for several kilometers, you'll just find yourself somewhere suitable to take off and land with a system that can get the job done. You won't need that VTOL part anymore. And if you launch it from a ramp and land it with a parachute, then job done. I don't know.
Well, look what the US Postal Service were doing many years ago. They basically, they'd pick up stuff they have a bag strung between two poles, and they'd have a hook on the back of the plane. They'd pick it up and then they'd drop it from the plane. It was like, you don't need to land. You just drop the stuff. If it's not breakable, just have an area where it can be dropped. You don't even need to slow down just because there's an 80-mile-an-hour delivery drone now.
Yes, well, then that's actually speaking to Zipline, and I'm not going to try and pronounce your first name, Mr. Sharma there. But that speaks to Zipline. I initially thought it was a nonsense concept because that's what it was doing. But then as soon as you realize they've got very much control over the takeoff and the landing, because it always comes back to the same place and onto a mat, and uses the parachute, it's like, oh yeah, actually that's really quite a good idea. It eliminates a load of the unknowns. And
yeah. Because as I've said in the past, drone delivery, it's never really going to be a business to consumer activity. It's going to be business to business. It's not going to be a case of dropping a pizza at someone's back door. It's never going to happen. It's just no way. But where a business on one side of town needs a product really quickly, and a business on the other side of town has that product, delivering it across town, dropping it on the roof of the building or whatever in an area, that's where drone delivery will come in. If it's medical supplies, someone's died and you transport their heart or something, that's drone delivery. It's a business to business thing, not a business to consumer thing. And so in that respect, a lot of the things that people are looking at that hold back business to consumer are not an issue with business to business. So we need to look and address the biggest market first, which is business to business. The rest will follow on possibly, but in the meantime, until we can get self-driving cars that don't kill people, I don't think we will be doing drone deliveries.
Well, that wasn't the car's fault.
Did you see the last? It was a Tesla one where the car was on self-drive and crashed into a motorway barrier and killed the driver. So it was just disclosed the other day that the car was in self-drive mode when it crashed, and so that potentially is another instance of a self-drive car killing someone.
To be the devil's advocate, how many cars killed people? On the same day, how many other people are killed in cars around the world? It's a feeble argument, isn't it? But that's
not newsworthy.
Oh, fair enough. But the one that I've read about, that the pedestrian, or the one they pushing a cycle, I can't quite remember. Whatever he's doing, it was completely outside of the regulations, as it were. The person wasn't where a person should have been, and that's where they've got to get a handle on it. But also, there was a person in the car monitoring the systems, so that person should have acted and reacted.
But that person looked like they were playing on their phone. They weren't doing their job. They weren't sitting there ready to take control. They were busy doing something else. And yeah, that was many failures, because if they hadn't disabled the Volvo's own anti-collision radar, the car would have braked itself in that situation. So their superior technology was inferior. It was a coincidence of many bad events. It was the cyclist obviously didn't look before crossing the road, because you wouldn't walk out in front of a car if you saw it coming. The onboard systems did not detect the cyclist in the right amount of time. The supervising driver wasn't doing her job. Any one of those things, if they hadn't happened, there wouldn't have been a fatality. But there were so many things all coincided at one time, somebody died. And that's what happens. Usually incidents are the result of more than one factor. There are multiple factors that coincide. The aviation people, know that with aviation. It's not just one thing that causes planes to crash. It's always something else, because we usually have multiple redundancy systems built into this kind of technology. So that's why we have so few fatal air crashes. But when it happens, it happens. And so it's just a shame in that case. But it shows that people are pushing this technology faster than it's ready. I mean, I still think self-drive cars, I can't believe it. I can't fly my model aircraft or my drone in many places, my 250-gram little toy, because it's too dangerous. But I can get in a Tesla, sit back, have a cup of coffee while I'm tootling down the motorway, and that's, not necessarily legal, but I mean, it's considered safe because the car will drive itself. It's great technology. We seem to have a very distorted view of risk.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely pegging back the commercial drone industry unnecessarily at the moment. But it speaks to the same headline grabbing, though, that doesn't it? It speaks to nonsense headlines coming out of a tragic event. But there was plenty of a balanced report would have said, "Oh, Greg, Osby drone, Osby drone's here, Osby drone. How can you be?
G'day, mate.
How can you be here? You're banned. Tell us, how did you get banned? Yeah. And welcome.
And no tampering with the ball.
Yeah, yes.
we wouldn't do that. Not at this time of the morning.
I think it was in the morning when it happened last time. But anyway, moving on very swiftly. Yeah. So tell us why you got your YouTube channel bounced.
Yeah, look, I was creating an event through the software that I use to stream, and I hadn't even streamed anything on that particular day, but the YouTube algorithm didn't like what was in my event. So some word I used or something I said, or I don't know, something in the text was detected as what it thinks is spam. And unfortunately, the appeal process didn't work. And YouTube and Google have not been listening to me ever since. They don't want to listen to small content creators, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. I don't make a great deal of money, but that little video that I put up of this, let's get another mention of this tracker. There was another one that was immediately demonetized. I don't know why. Yeah. It was just immediately demonetized. It's like, why? I have no idea what about the word tracker or whatever.
No, I think it was your bad drone flying.
Yeah, that's probably it. That's probably it. I understand. That
pendulous. It was pendulous. That's why I got it. The porn filters kicked in.
Pendulous. Yeah. There you go. Yes. Look at that thing swinging. Yes.
You're among good company, though, because from what I hear, a lot of people are getting demonetized for no reason. It's just happening on the first day automatically, and then it comes back or something, from what I've been hearing.
Yeah, it's not good.
They've got this propensity to demonetize it. So shoot first, ask questions later. And they say, oh, yeah, and even if you go through the appeal process, by the time the appeal process comes through and it's remonetized, well, it's had most of its views anyway, which is they're shooting themselves in the foot because they're the ones also missing out on revenue. So I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I think it's just that, these algorithms are not that smart and they're not refined well enough yet. It's like the people that have put videos up and had a copyright strike for 20 seconds of birdsong. Apparently that bird song is owned by somebody. Someone's filed a copyright strike. And in some cases, they've disputed the copyright strike, and the copyright or the claimant has won when it's bird song. You can't copyright that because the whole process is so automated that, they just run the same algorithm on the same piece of stuff. Yeah, second time a failure, right? That's it. And you risk getting a copyright strike and then losing some of your privileges simply because you uploaded something that's their algorithms have misinterpreted as belonging to somebody else. It's lunacy.
I wouldn't algorithm got it wrong, but the big problem for me is that my channel content is 99% streaming. And the fact that after strike one, you lose the ability to stream, it's a death sentence for me. I can't do anything. So, and yeah. At least if they listen to an appeal within a reasonable amount of time, I mean, the first appeal, this is the second time they've banned me for the same thing. The first time I just set up a new brand account, new channel, and started again. Build your subscribers back up again from scratch. But then it happened a few weeks later. And, it was more than 2 months ago since the first appeal. They didn't respond. This time it's only been a couple of weeks and they still haven't responded. So I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I'm a YouTube channel partner. I reached the threshold, which is 1 million views a month or something, where you actually get to talk to somebody. I can go through a process where I get hold of somebody and it's an individual one-on-one thing. So if I have a problem with that, I can contact my YouTube partner support person and they'll look into it and try and resolve it. But people who have like ordinary channels with a regular number of subscribers, you're in the cold. There's nothing you can do. There's nobody you can talk to. It's like, we don't care about you because you're not making us the millions of dollars that we want, and it's kind of the thing that worries me is now they've demonetized all those little tiny channels. To me, for me, that's a good thing because it means that the advertising pie is spread over fewer channels, so I'm more likely to earn money. But what worries me as a YouTube user is that so many of the small channels that, if they were nurtured, would grow to become big channels, and they've got really good, valuable, informative, educational content. They're never going to get there because they've been nipped in the bud way too soon. And it really, really is disappointing because when I want to know something these days, I don't even go to Google. I go to YouTube. If I want to learn how to do something, there's tutorials on everything on YouTube. And it's such a valuable resource of knowledge for mankind that for YouTube to arbitrarily come along and start weeding stuff out because they don't think it's right, or have some computer algorithm, AI-based algorithm, which is not correct 99% of the time, but not 1% of the time it identifies, a child's toy as a military assault rifle. I mean, that sort of thing. No, it's not good enough, and it's really harming the whole community and the value of YouTube to mankind.
To mankind, my word, goodness,
and girly kind, and womankind.
Goodness me, yeah, no. It's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? As I said, it's something that we wouldn't have been able to do 5, 10, 12 years ago. So it's more than a new age problem. So tell me, Oz by Drone, what was Oz by Drone? Great, yeah, I know. I can see anything when you talk. But am I wrong then to keep saying Oz by Drone because this may not be the name of your channel moving forward?
No, you can keep using it. No matter what happens, it'll stay.
Well, Greg, what were you doing on your channel at Oz by Drone?
Look, the story is, my wife bought me a drone less than a year ago, and that was her first mistake. I got hooked very quickly. It was only a toy drone, and I quickly sent it off into the bush to meet its maker. I did the same thing with my second drone on its maiden flight. After that, I thought, no, I got to get some GPS, and did the usual kind of new drone pilot thing and was happy with that. Then I started, looking at YouTube to work out how to actually fly this thing, and started watching some videos, and that was interesting. Came across one channel that I watch regularly, and he was doing a regular weekly show, a guy by the name of Ken Heron. And I got to watching it and I liked it. And we became mates. We talked a fair bit. And I said, I might give this a try and do something with an Australian flavour. So the channel is meant to be a weekly live stream, have some guests, have some fun, show some Australian countryside and background. Here are some beautiful places in Australia, but also talking about the technology and the regulations behind drones.
And then YouTube put a kibosh on it.
Yeah, hey, Gary, you should try that. A weekly live stream with guests. That might work for you.
It could do, yeah, it could. You never know. If the guests turn up, the devils don't turn up. Well, I need to go back to the comments talking about the communications like Zipline have, using LTE, using the cell phones, and that's exactly why the cell phone companies want a big part of the UTM pie, because they see themselves making thousands and thousands of dollars in micro communication payments. That's why AT&T and who's the other one? Another
Verizon.
One. Verizon.
What I want to know is LTE services, are they mission critical enough for these applications? I mean, how many times have your cell phone stops working? In a situation where you're controlling a drone, an unmanned aircraft, which, as we know, is death on a stick. Can we rely on a cellular network? Are they toughened enough? Are they reliable enough? What's the mean time to failure, that sort of stuff? These things, you can't put a thing in an airplane without having to go through this huge certification process that it's not going to fail within so many hours and has a formal lifespan, and you've got all these procedures. How can we then just hook all these hugely dangerous systems up to the local cell tower? I mean, I don't think that's really the safest thing to do, is it?
No, I have to agree. See what Greg thinks.
So What's the difference when you lose comms from your controller at the moment? You've already got built into most systems some sort of a return to home with obstacle avoidance and all of that kind of good stuff. Sure, if you're talking about something that's a larger drone, that's going to be a different kind of category, and you wouldn't rely on a cell network for that. But for the small sized RPAs, it would make sense to me, use the technology from the mobile providers, but use the same kind of fail safes that you already have for loss of comms from your existing controller.
The problem is you don't need that cellular technology because you're limited to visual line of sight, and your 2.4, 5.8 gigs is going to give you that. So why would you pay for a service that isn't going to provide you anything else except a bill at the end of the month?
Because you want to go beyond visual line of sight. And when the regulators catch up and say, yeah, we're going to allow that, but we want these particular protections, which would be what's going to happen if you lose comms to your cell tower. Are you going to sit and hover for a period of time before you get to a certain battery level, or are you going to try and come home? What kind of collision avoidance do you have built into your aircraft in the first place? I think there's a place for it, but only in a limited market, not in the much bigger RPAs.
Yeah, even for small RPAs, I look at it. I have never had an RF link failure in my radio control setup, but probably 2 or 3 times a month, my cell phone doesn't work because the local service is out. So in terms of reliability, my 2.4 gig radio system and my 5.8 gig video system are way more reliable than the cellular network. So even for small RPA, I don't see why you choose a less reliable system at a price compared to a more reliable one. And I mean, I hear of people that have flown beyond visual line of sight with 2.4 or 5.8 gigs.
No.
So, no. I know. I have never seen it myself. I don't report of them.
No.
Apparently it's been done.
It never happens.
Gosh.
It never happens.
Well, the thing is, how much of this crossfire system, these UHF systems are being sold? Do people really think that people are buying these systems with are using it to fly in the park? Seriously? I mean, one of the biggest tragedies is that regulators, they must acknowledge that this is happening. Yet there has not been one incident that I'm aware of anywhere in the world where it's been a long-range FPV plane that's caused an issue, right? So it is the lowest risk type of flying because people are going to fly beyond visual line of sight. Make sure their systems work. They don't want to lose all their gear. They go to great lengths to make sure that they have everything working perfectly before they do it. So they're the safest of FPV flyers. They're not someone who buys something in a box and just throws it in the air at like airport. They are the safe people. But what they do is illegal. It's like, again, desk pilots. The people who are making up the rules for these RPAS, how many of them have ever actually flown one? You can't write a book on how to ski if you don't know how to ski, but you can write a book on how to fly an RPAS even if you've never even turned one on.
It's funny, the RPAS in Australian Skies conference a few weeks back, I thought they were going to actually talk about BVLOS and what do we actually need to do to get there? What are we going to need to put in place? But the problem is, it was more an industry talk fest than a community talk fest where the community and the association was saying, hey, here's the roadmap. Now let's work out the technology to go and fill that in. And each vendor then therefore has their own solution. And the regulator is going to sit there and watch, well, we've got someone who's talking about a solution and we're going to wait and let them screw it up and then blame them. They need to have some balls and say, hey, we need to own this. We don't need to own every single detail, but we need to own the high-level architecture. And then someone's got to go and say, let's evaluate filling in the blanks for that architecture.
Well, it's very much like the American next-gen air traffic system, and that's been a whole load of fumbling and bumbling exactly because different vested interest groups have tried to put their finger in the pie and have their little bit of it as well and steer it this way, steer it that way, back and forth, back and forth. You're right. Yeah, no, people do need to just say, right, we know this is the architecture. It needs to be the radio architecture. The World Radio Council has been trying to get RPAS communication above, I can't remember now, I think it was above 6 gigs for years, and to ratify that. So then all of a sudden everything will change because all the legal stuff will be up there, where really high. Then you will need an antenna tracker, this, that, and all the other. So it's, and that's why, Bumby saying that's why the FAA won't get involved. Yeah, I don't know. How are we going to get these standards enforced, Bruce? How are we going to decide on them, first of all?
Well, it's a real lolly scramble at the moment, isn't it? Every man has dogs out for his own best interests. And I've said for quite some time now that when it comes to RPAS, we must have dedicated frequencies for the control and command link. I mean, we can't be using the same frequencies that your baby monitor's using and your microwave oven's on and things like that. It's lunacy. We're talking about the danger of these things, and then we're throwing the operating frequencies into the ISM band where every man and his dog can do whatever they like. It's lunacy, but it seems like we're focused on the wrong end of the stick. You know, did
you say ISM? Did you say ISM?
So, you know, there's no structure, there's no real good planning. Every little agency is focused on its own thing, but there's no overall viewpoint where we're going to say, well, this is the first priority, this is the second priority. No one gives a damn about UTM until we've got reliable, solid systems, you know, on dedicated pieces of bandwidth, so we're not going to have problems. It's like it's so disorganized. I fear for the future. And until we get organization, we can't rely on people coming up with decent standards, because whoever's got the most lobbying power will lobby for their open standard to be adopted. And then once it's adopted by regulators, everybody's got to comply. And if you have a regulation that people don't like, you won't get full compliance. And even with this, like you're saying with that conference, we've got regulators, 90% of RPAS traffic is recreational. But how much consulting do the regulators do with those 90%? Now, they're talking to industry. They're talking to this big player and that big player and the other big player, the people who are hardly flying RPAS. When the 90% of the people who are doing it every day, they're basically discounted. You know, we don't care too much about you. You're just general public. You don't have budgets for taking us out for lunch and flying us to Las Vegas and things like that. So they cannot get the respect and compliance they want from the 90% of recreational users unless they show a bit of respect and listen to those people and acknowledge their needs, wants, and requirements, such as beyond visual line of sight, which has been done safely for a great deal of time. Even if you just allocate areas where people are allowed to fly beyond visual line of sight under certain conditions, then they can get it out of their system. But just to make it illegal, full stop. I think even FPVs are legal in Australia, isn't it, technically speaking? So
unless you're a member of the you're a member of a flying club, and you've got to do it on their field and under their rules and yada yada.
Exactly. So immediately you're not going to get compliance with that, because you look on YouTube, all the people that fly in parks and things, not members of the Australian Model Flying Association, there's no compliance. Yeah. So people aren't respecting it because that's a regulation that is not a good fit to the realities of the world. So regulators, they need to talk more closely with the people who they need to control. And at the moment, it's not your commercial operators that are flying in the flight path of airliners. It's not your commercial operators that are doing the wrong things. They are looking out for themselves. They don't want to lose their licenses. So they are very careful. It's the recreational people. But the regulators are just discounting them, pushing them to one side as just a bunch of rabble rousers, and they don't care. So if you don't provide a solution that meets their needs, you're never going to get the compliance necessary to ensure safety. I can't believe that they're so thick they don't understand this.
So to the original purpose of that conference that I went to, let's just do their job for them now. Let's decide what is the solution. Number one, you've talked about radio frequencies. That's one part. But in addition to that, you want these things to be able to see each other, to avoid each other, and to communicate with manned aircraft and all of those kind of things that we...
Put it away, Gary. You'll get us blocked.
Okay, but starting at the beginning, you know, drone registration and pilot registration, and being able to trust the identity of what data it is you're receiving through whatever communication link it is, right? So we can't even agree on the registration and identification of stuff. And if you have a look at ADS-B, for example, it's not secured in any way, shape or form. There's nothing to stop someone from spoofing that. You speak to Kevin and he'd go and do a rant about it forever and a day. Well, we've got a chance to do this right, but you've already got DJI going and launching Aeroscope, where they're going and sending out this information, and security was almost, well, we know DJI security is always an afterthought. They didn't think about it. So why don't we kind of lobby and say, let's go rewind to our regulators. Let's build a PKI infrastructure or something where they, not the manufacturer, the regulator, can issue certificates. Certificates can be loaded up on devices. That's the identity. It can't be then hacked and spoofed and all of that kind of stuff. You're then transmitting the information. It can then be trusted. What a novel concept. You can then use that information to avoid other aircraft. What a novel concept. And you keep going and building on that. But no one can agree on the foundation. It'll never happen.
Yeah. Well,
the other thing to remember too is that we still have the signal to noise ratio. I don't think the average person with a Mavic Air or even a Mavic is the threat that they're portrayed to be. So
No.
why are we even bothered getting in there and regulating and dealing with this non-problem? Focus on the problem that is going to come
Yes.
with all these delivery drones and things.
But by the same token, why don't we actually use the carrot and the stick? The carrot is, if you want to fly a BVLOS, you have to have something that's going to transmit your location and be able to detect and avoid.
Yeah, well, funny you should mention that, for $31. But that's the ridiculous thing. So, this also speaks to standards, really. For those, the only reason I'm banging on about this thing here is because, and it's only 10 milliwatts. So this speaks to a couple of things. This is an efficient, modern way of sending radio signals. Far more efficient, far more modern than ADS-B, where you need a clunking big signal to get the same result, really, and it's cheap. So that's your ADS-B. So that's gets rid of Bruce's noise issue, and it gets yourself into a UTM, and it gets it in a friendly, neighborly way that isn't going to stamp over all sorts of other spectrum users. And it's cheap. But
can you trust identity?
I'm sure a clever software person could make that happen.
Exactly.
That's software. That's software. That's not
the problem you've got then, though. As soon as you introduce things like digitally signed certificates and that, someone's going to have to pay. They won't be handed out for free. Someone's going to have to pay. And from a bureaucrat and a politician's point of view, how can we tax this? How can we get some money out of this? I mean, it's we're providing a service by doing this. We need to get some money back.
One of the UTM providers that is currently pushing themselves all around the world. That is exactly how they started, was they wanted to provide digital certificates that people would pay for identity, and that didn't work for them. So they spun off into a mapping app, and now that'll all come back around again. It'll all come back around. It'll arrive.
Yeah. But I think something like Let's Encrypt, which is free encryption and free certificate issuance, it's already available. If governments partnered with someone like that, they could go and come up with a solution. It's very doable.
But won't we be having drones that have onboard vision? So you could hear the other thing coming radio wise. You could listen out for something, and then you could see it coming. Why do they need to shout their existence?
Because there's no 100% guarantee with all of those things working. You can't trust the radio because you don't have the signed information, so you don't know who they are. Sure, you can see, but there's always blind spots. What was the third one you said?
I don't really know. I can't remember, but surely you can. Well, just electronic. You can hear. You can receive noise from other aircraft.
Do we really care if two Mavics crash into each other over a grassy field in the middle of nowhere? I don't give a damn. I mean, again, we're looking at the wrong end of the problem.
Yeah, but again, trying to expand and say, right, the BVLOS thing that's happening out there is happening now because some people are doing it intelligently. If we want to find a way to grow and to expand and have people fly BVLOS in other areas, but they don't know that there's another guy flying near them, how do we protect against that? And I don't think vision positioning is going to do it, or vision sensors, I should say.
I've seen vision-based systems that can more than do it, and they've been empirically tested by the UK military, and at
what cost?
No, low cost 10 years ago. So it's more than possible now.
But again, we're making it too complex. If all we need to do is have areas which are designated for BVLOS operation, which are going to be low risk areas, low population densities, low asset areas where you can go and do that. If you want to fly a BVLOS, just go and do it. And if you smack into a tree or you smack into another drone, that is a risk that you take, and you undertake your activities with acceptance of that level of risk. Then you don't have to worry about all this stuff, And if you have a maximum weight for the craft, and then those people can go and do it. Then what you do is you say, if you fly BVLOS outside those areas, then we come around to your house and we take you away and we lock you up for a very long time. So, carrot and stick. Here's an area you can do it safely. If you don't do that, then here's the stick, and we whack you around the head with it. And then you don't need any technology.
Yeah, I think there's different markets though. So there are people like you who would be happy flying in that kind of an area. There are other people who want to fly and capture buildings and architecture and sculpture, and they want to work out how to do that. There will be solutions. It's just a matter of time. Like I said, number one, identity. Number two, How do you avoid? And the avoidance has got to be, and you know, I understand vision avoidance is something that's there, but if it's really so readily available, why haven't the larger manufacturers already adopted it to an acceptable standard? Right now, I guarantee you, without trying very hard, you could crash a couple of Phantoms or Mavics together, you know, with it easy as rubbing a stick.
Yeah. Again, it boils down to this robustness. It boils down to, is it a certifiable standard? It works 99% of the time,
Correct.
which means one in every 100 flights is going to end up with a crash. You know, like it's not good enough. It's very good, but it's not good enough for aviation purposes. Aviation goes over the top in everything. You know, you can take a car battery and put it in a 172, it'll work fine. But if you want to do it properly, you've got to get the car battery that has a sticker, which costs 10 times as much. This is the way they go. And it's so they can blame people when things go wrong, and it's going to apply to RPAS stuff as well, perhaps even more so, because there's no pilot on board to make sure things happen properly and to spot drones.
Well, where do you see, Greg? Where do you see most of the money being made? BVLOS, then why do we need to have all this? Where's the money going to be made?
Money in agricultural and in surveying and photography. Those are the three larger areas in the, you know, the non-delivery space. There's definitely money in those areas. And those are the kind of people who want to make their money, but they're not going to be able to afford the necessarily significantly more expensive systems.
But well, agriculture is an easy one because you're going to be by its definition in a low-risk area. So why don't we just do it like this? Why don't we just issue a NOTAM up to 500 feet? Manned aircraft, bog off, don't come here. There's no need to, over my huge farm, which covers an area, you know, goodness knows of what size in Australia.
So let's go back to construction there. There's building sites everywhere. There are people who want to survey at building sites on a regular basis. But the overhead of going and doing something in that way is significant. Is there another solution, right? You talk about the manned aircraft incentive to keep yourself alive, right? How do we do something? How do we give an incentive to a BVLOS pilot? Maybe there's something where you can actually have a BVLOS deposit or bond or something that says, you know, hey, I'm willing to go and put my money where my mouth is. Sure, it's not exactly the same as a human being in the aircraft, but put something at risk to show that you are a safe flyer. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
We don't need to do that with most other activities. And I think the problem people are bad actors, and bad actors, they're not going to follow the rules anyway. They're not going to pay a deposit. They're going to do it anyway.
No, they're not.
And construction sites, you must have big construction sites in Australia, because I've never seen a construction site where it couldn't be completely surveyed with a spotter still viewing the drone. And as Gary says, agricultural low risk. That's what I'm saying. If you stratify on the basis of risk.
A spotter, yes. A spotter, yes. But that's not in accordance with the regulations here.
Oh, well, yeah, CASA, FPV is the only area where CASA has really sort of slipped up. Apart from that, their regs are pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think if they modified their regulations to allow a spotter, that'd fix a lot of the problems, definitely.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we can, I don't know how it works there, but over here you can have a chap. And in America, I know you can have a chap a little bit further down the line, and they can hand on flights as well when they're going down infrastructure and things like that. BVLOS is definitely an issue, and even say going out to 2 kilometers, which isn't a huge amount of BVLOS. Allegedly, Bruce has told me he knows someone that's flown further than that, or has heard about them, read about it in the paper. But yeah, that would increase the potential for profit a great deal. But I guess we've got to be a little bit careful of what we give away with data about what we're doing. We've got to be careful about many things doing that. You can't give away the farm in order to get that, as it were.
This is interesting, this handing off. You can't do it with modern radio control gear because it has a unique identifier for each transmitter. So with the old long wire gear, you could fly along and then you'd have it say, I'm turning off, you turn on, someone could pick up control of the craft. Can't do that with 2.4 because each receiver is uniquely bound to a transmitter. So there's not ability to hand off unless you've got some really clever infrastructure with multiple receivers. So I think what they've talked about in New Zealand is you can have a spotter beyond your visual line of sight who can see the craft as long as he is in constant contact with you, which then introduces another point of failure, the radio link or the cell phone link or whatever. We already described that cell phone links are unreliable. So better just to have a damn good piece of kit that works well and has good specifications, so you don't need to rely on those things. And if you stay below 400 feet, you don't have to issue a NOTAM to GA to stay above 500 because they're supposed to anyway.
Well, yes, apparently so. What did I want to say then? I wanted to say another thing. I think where people rush in with radio link failures and stuff like that is they're trying to fly in super, and as Bruce has alluded to, super radio rich environments in which they're using frequencies that right next to it all. We need protected spectrum, and that should have been resolved before all these regs came along, really, because people are running riot with it. 1.2, that people wonder why they have flyaways. They've got the 20 watts of 1.2 gig REF, and it's stamping all over their GPS. So a good start to standards, I think, would be that protected spectrum, which
it's very interesting. If you look at the CAA website in New Zealand, they've got a survey of the RF profile of an area called the Basin, which is around the harbour in Auckland City, and it is such a hostile environment. They show, look at all this noise, yet they still allow people under 102 certified operators to use 2.4 gigahertz to fly large RPAS in that area. Well, you've identified a major risk, but you're saying to people, okay, go ahead and do it anyway. So again, things don't gel. They say one thing, do something else. There's just no consistency to the thought that the regulators have. They really, and again, it boils down to, we've got desk pilots. We've got people who've read a lot of books. They have no first-hand experience, so they just say, oh, that should be all right because I read it in a book, or I read it on the internet. No, the people making these decisions must have first-hand experience. They must be skilled people who have been there, done it themselves, and they can give the actual experienced input, not just the I read it in a book somewhere input. And that's why so many regulators have got it wrong, and that's why they don't even differentiate between a drone and an RC model aircraft.
At pull up a sandbag at Farnborough in 2010, we went out on the other side of the runway to go and fly, and they all brought out their frequency analyzers, and of course in all the stands, all the world's military salespeople had all their various missile defense things and stuff, and I was the only muggins there, and the initial thing that was so cheap that I still had 35 megs radio gear, so I was the only one that could fly in that first slot. All the 2.4 gig stuff was shut down, so Chuck Muggins cheap shot here could fly. But it's people don't give it a second thought. Flyaways, this, that, or the other, and people are asking an awful lot of some relatively low cost equipment in a lot of circumstances. Rant hat off. Sorry, Greg, I'll let you rant. You can take over the ranting, but we've gone bloody 34 minutes over time. How did that happen?
I know you're over, but let me share one last thing before
worries.
Before you wrap.
Yeah.
Just again at that UPAS and Australian Skies conference I was talking about before, they had an example, and I mentioned in the chat a few weeks ago, of someone flying a drone from Canberra, and the actual drone it was in Mexico. The interesting observation there: is it illegal to pilot a drone in Australia? And if so, we had CASA in the room and they did nothing. Interesting observation.
Yeah, no, it's something that is coming, and that's again it's how much in control are you, isn't it? And that's the other thing. Are you piloting it if all you're doing is starting a waypoint mission? Are you really in the loop? Are you what?
This was full control, where the guy was commanding up, down, left, right, speed, heading, and apparently I wasn't the pilot, so I can't comment, but he said the latency was pretty low, so he was very pleased with that. But the other interesting thing was the threat from someone pointing a laser at the drone's camera, so that certainly impacted at the time, and he just sat and hovered for a while. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, well, we live in interesting times, don't we? And in the comments, we've got someone from a very big drone company. I won't call them out, and they'll have to have a finger in the pie all around the world of what regulations are doing and what's what, and they would probably like a unified standard. It's probably make their job a lot easier. What's stealth mode watching on the Rift? Yes, I know. It's an interesting, funny world we live in. I'm quite interested why why people are talking about long range links and stuff. Radio is an interesting thing. I like radios. Did I mention I like radios? Anyway.
Geez, what's that, Gary?
Yeah. It's for nothing. But there is no. The UK is beginning to wake up to the fact that low-cost conspicuity methods might be a good idea, and they're asking smaller airfields to put ADS-B receivers in and FLARM open glider network receivers, because it all increases the situational awareness picture, and it makes everybody safer, and you can't say fairer than that. So we might be also looking at it at the wrong point of view. We shouldn't be looking about it from, oh, you know, so we can do commercial work and whatever, and so aircraft. It's just safety. We should just be looking at safety, forgetting all this other. Do everything we can to make stuff safer, and that's where we should be looking at it, not flipping money. And I don't know. Bruce, rescue me, Bruce, rescue me.
No, you can. Right,
oh yeah. Look at that. We had and didn't have guests earlier on, and now we seem to be in 37 minutes over time. That's mad. Oz by Drone, Greg, thank you very much for joining us and taking some time to join us. Drop your email address in this private chat on the side. And if we haven't been banned because of you after tonight, you'll have to come back again. And Bruce, what's on your build table this week? What's in the?
Well, I'm still working on the sub 250 gram camera drone thing, which is really kind of, I've hit a little bit of a wall, and if it was 275 grams, I'd have finished it by now. But 25 grams is a lot of weight when you're trying to get rid of it. And the other thing is my SD.
How dare you?
Yeah, I didn't want to say. The SD digital video link for FPV is, I'm still waiting on some components for that and some circuit boards, which I've ordered. I've done up and are being fabbed at the moment. So hopefully that'll arrive in the next week or so, we'll see some movement there. So yeah, there's things that, unfortunately, when you're doing projects like this, they tend to have quite a long gestation period. Then everything happens at once. So, and I've been a bit bloody crook with the Parkinson's. It's been putting me off a bit. But hopefully I'll be getting up to speed again very soon, and we'll see some interesting things coming.
Absolutely cool. All right, well, we better push off now because we've been here a long time, and I can hear that flipping dog wanting to get back in now as well. Flipping dog. But anyway, thanks very much, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world. I hope you all had a great Easter, and you're not feeling too sick after too much chocolate, and your children weren't too wound up and all those other good things, and your families didn't wind you up too much. Please join us again at 2100 GMT next Tuesday, where we'll try and do this again a little more orderly. I think we might be doing something on Thursday. Might be talking to those people that have got the VTOL drone design software, so that'll be hang out sometime, I think about 1200 GMT, I think, something like that. And other than that, thanks chats for joining us, thanks viewers, take care of yourselves, see you next week, bye bye.